So today I'm going to do an update on HIMS and HERS and when I could potentially sell the stock, because the stock has been on absolute fire. For me personally, I'm nearly up 300% on this stock and it's performed absolutely amazing. The days where we were back 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and this stock was sitting at $3 and everyone was talking so negatively about it, people saying that it was uninvestable, as you guys know, uninvestable at $3.11, and yeah, nobody wanted to own the stock at $3. I was posting videos about HIMS and HERS saying it was a good opportunity, and there wasn't really that many people out there talking about it. You come back to today now and everybody is loving the stock, and I remember even posting videos on YouTube about it and nobody else was talking about it. You know, I was the only person ever making content about it back when it was a, $3, $4, $5 stock, and now you look at it and everybody loves it. So it's a total different stock to where we were 2 years ago, but I'm not complaining, because me buying, and some of you guys as well, that were buying that stock when it was $3, $4, $5, you've been looking back at this stock and going, it's doing absolutely amazing for me, and I'm sure there's a lot of you guys watching this video today that are up big time on this position. So with it doing so well, I thought, well, let's just talk about it, where it's at, the valuation, have I got any plans to sell, and just a bit of a talk about the stock, but also a bit of a catch up about things that have gone on and potential future plans for the position as well. So hope you enjoyed the video. I know you guys at HIMS and HERS shareholders will definitely enjoy the video, and let's get started. So today HIMS and HERS is up another 10% and it's now a $24 stock. The days of when it was a $3 stock, $4 stock, they seem so far away, and year to date as well, the stock is up 151%. So yeah, when it's your second largest position in the portfolio and you've got a stock up 151%, I'm sure you guys can guess it's been a pretty good year in the stock market for me so far this year already. But I got to say, it was only a few months ago, I remember seeing a couple of people that were talking about HIMS and HERS, and they were saying, back in 2023, from where we were about to February time, a good yearish, the stock was only up 4%, and I remember a few people going, oh, the stock's not doing anything, it's a boring stock. And losing the patience, and people were selling the stock, and people won't tell you, but they did sell the stock. And what some people do is they get so greedy at seeing the gains that some people even sold the stock after a 50% gain, and they're totally missing out on all these gains that we're having at the moment. They won't tell you that, but people did do that. So yeah, I mean, people during this time frame, they were getting fed up with it, and I was just like, look at the financials, guys. If you were looking at HIMS and HERS, I mean, I'll just scroll down this Google page and you look at the last quarter, 45% year-over-year growth, net income 210%. It's impressive, and at some point the share price can't stay like this forever. It has to reflect the financials, especially when you were such as a cheaper valuation as what HIMS were. And obviously we've kind of got the rewards, especially this year. That's why you can't time the market, guys. You sit on the stock for a year, it doesn't do anything, and it can be a bit frustrating, especially when the financials are so good, and then you try to time the market, and then boom, within 6 months you kind of like you look back and go, what has just happened? What have I just kind of missed out on? And yeah, it's been a really good performance this year. And it just kind of comes down to the point of view where, where you look at Warren Buffett and he says, the stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. And that's basically what the stock market is. As long as you're buying stocks that fundamentally are moving in the right direction, HIMS and HERS, there might be periods of time where, it gets a bit like, oh, come on, you're doing good financials, reflect them. And you can have periods of times of, a year, 2 years, 3 years where the stock stagnates, but you will eventually get rewarded. And any of you guys that have been in the HIMS and HERS stock, especially from when I started talking about it in 2022, some of you guys are up 300, like me, 300%, some of you even have better averages than me, 400, 500%, and are absolutely smashing it at the moment. Before I do get on to some more of the HIMS and HERS content though, I just want to say, if you're on the Patreon, I have just dropped my US portfolio review for June, so you can see all my holdings like HIMS and HERS, and all my positions, like what I'm up and what I'm down. So if you do want to see that, link's in the description. Join the Patreon, £5 a month, 2 exclusive videos a week, a Discord with 500 members on to talk to about stocks, including me. So go check that out if you are on the Patreon. But what also kind of got in my mind is when I look at HIMS and HERS, what HIMS and HERS was always supposed to be for me was this stock. It was supposed to be, HIMS and HERS was one of my big, the ones that I backed big as I think it could be a mega returner for me in the next, 4, 5, 10 years time. And I backed it big. And sometimes these sort of stocks, they can go terribly wrong. They can go terribly wrong, like a Skills, for example, Tattoo Chef. You think you've got the next big 5x or 10xer, but they can go terribly wrong. But when they do go right, they can easily make up for any of those sort of mistakes and even more. And HIMS is achieving what I say out to be. When I talk about HIMS, and I've talked about HIMS on the YouTube channel for many years now, I always talked about HIMS and hairs. It's always that stock I thought would be, I at least wanted it to 5x. And we are kind of getting towards that 5x territory now. I think even now in the future, I look at it now and I do think it could be that stock that even does even better than that. But this is what I always want it to be, because as an individual stock picker, and I'm going to One Up on Wall Street here by Peter Lynch, and if you haven't read the book, you need to read it. It's, in my opinion, the best investing book out there. Fantastic book. And if you are going to be an individual stock picker, you need to hit a home run. You need to hit a home run or you're going to underperform the market. And there's a page on here, page 34, and it talks about two portfolios. Portfolio A, and he's got a couple of stocks in here, as you can see, which, by the way, this is an introduction to the advantage of dumb money, and he talks about how you don't have to know the craziest companies in the world to make money on stocks. You can have, your money invested in Coca-Cola, General Motors, Kellogg's. These stocks are very easy to understand, and you can still do very well with picking those sort of stocks. But you can see here, this is a portfolio of stocks, and you got one that's down. And by the way, you don't always need to have a portfolio of all the winners. By the way, look at this. This stock for this portfolio from Peter Lynch, for example. He's got 1, 2, 3 stocks in his portfolio that are down, and yet the portfolio's still up over that time frame. But he's got a couple of stocks that are up here, and he talks about how if he has these 10 stocks here, and it goes back onto the next page, this would have been a return of 10,000 in, would have returned 30.4%, which compared to the S&P 500 was 40%. So you would have a bit underperformed the market, and you'd say, what's the point of doing it? Just buy the S&P 500. But if you are able to find that gem, if you are able to find that Stop and Shop, and if you add Stop and Shop into this portfolio here, which then returned 900%, look at the difference on your returns. Having one of those stocks that becomes a big returner for you gave you a total return of 110% and a chance to brag on Wall Street, as Peter Lynch says. And that's exactly it. You as an individual stock picker, I feel like if you're just going to keep it basic, you might as well just go by the S&P 500. If you are going to be an individual stock picker, I feel like you do need to hit some of these these big returning stocks and to make it worth it. And that's what HIMS was always the plan to be, is to be that big stock that gives me those big returns, which it is starting to do right now. And for me, I look at the years I underperformed the market, like 2022, I didn't have a big hitter. I had no stocks that were the big hitters. When I look at how I previously were beating the market, is when I had those big hitters. It's when I had the Pinterest, the Pinterest that returned 400%. When I look at the likes of JD.com, returned 400%. When I had the Tesla, and Tesla returned 300, 400% or whatever it was, another big hitter, and Microsoft that I'm up 300% on now. Those are the things that drove big returns for me. Now the problem is that I actually had another one. The thing is that I've got HIMS and hairs that's been a very good hitter, DraftKings, which I hope to come another big hitter, but I also had Celsius, and this is, you're always kind of making mistakes and learning, and Celsius was actually another big hitter I got in the portfolio, even though by the way, it's having a bit of a slump at the moment. It's down 33% at the moment, but even then it would still bring up over 240%, and without the dip that it's currently being on, it was another 400%. So sometimes, you've also got to be careful not to sell your big hitters too early, and that can really sting you. So it's good to have one, and it's good to have one of those in the portfolio. But this is what I kind of need HIMS and hairs to be, is one of those big hitters for me, and it is starting to achieve there. Now, obviously, getting on to the selling point of view, which is obviously today's video. Is there a time where I could potentially go and sell HIMS and hairs? And the answer to that is no. I will not sell HIMS and hairs unless the financials fall off a cliff. If you look at HIMS and hairs, and by the way, they always sandbag guidance, by the way. If the company's going to grow at, let's say 20-30% a year, at the moment, look at these analyst forecasts. They're expecting, the growth to start slowing down in the next kind of 3 years. Realistically, I would still expect them to grow 20-30+% in the next kind of couple of years. So if they grow like 30+% in the next few years, there's no way I'm selling this business. No way. Because even though the company is, it's getting a bit more to the richer end of the valuation now, it's like 144 times forward earnings, it can easily grow into that valuation. When you're growing at like 30% CAGRs, you can easily grow into that valuation. And by the way, when you look at the profit as well, I still think analysts are way off on the profitability as well. So I think that's going to be massively upgraded as well. And obviously then, as soon as that's upgraded, the valuation is going to look even cheaper as well. So for me, I can't sell this stock because if this company's going to do these numbers for the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, I can't sell this because all that's going to happen is this stock's going to keep going up and up and up and up. And I don't want to sell a stock I have a cracking average on because that's going to give me an absolutely amazing return. So I'm not really anywhere close to selling HIMS and HERS if it carries on doing these financials. It could probably go to a crazy valuation and I still probably wouldn't sell HIMS and HERS. Now, I've got to say, do I trim HIMS and HERS? That's probably a question for another day. Is that I do think that if the stock starts getting to 200, 300 forward times earnings, then especially when you start looking at a stock chart, and I'll just have to go back off Celsius here, but you start looking at a stock chart, and the stock chart is starting to look a little bit like this, then it might be time to take a little bit of capital off the table. That's a different story for another day. Is that, you know, do I have to maybe trim the position? It could happen. But I'm definitely not selling all my position in HIMS and HERS. I'm holding that for many, many years is the main thing I'm going to say. The trimming part, you know, maybe take 5-10% off the table. That might happen at some point. I think there's nothing wrong with taking a bit of a healthy amount off the table, but as a point from selling it all, no chance. I'm nowhere close. Now, HIMS and HERS actually got 2 big wild cards coming up in the next earnings, and I'm very interested to see how the stock reacts to these over the next kind of couple of earnings. Now, you might have forgotten, HIMS and HERS CEO Andrew Dunham, he got into a little bit of some headlines from some comments he made. And it seems so long ago since this happened, but it did cause the stock to drop a fair amount. I think, when did this happen? Around about May time, and then the stock actually fell from, around about 20-30%. And this stock has the potential for the volatility to fall that much, so that's something you do have to be careful of. But you might have forgotten all that because of what's happening in like the last kind of couple of months. But obviously, when we get to the next set of earnings, we're going to see if that has any effect on the numbers. You know, everyone talks about this in a negative way, like, oh, people are cancelling the HIMS and HERS subscriptions. And I was like, I don't know if they'll cancel that much, because when you look at it at the moment, you know, a lot of people, I don't know how to say this in a politically correct way on a YouTube channel, but the people that use HIMS and HERS is the younger generation. Now, if you look at a lot of the younger generations, most of them, I would say, is more towards the support of these protests on the campus. And then more the users that are using HIMS and HERS. So they're not probably going to cancel their subscriptions. If anything, they might look at the Andrew Dunham CEO comments and they might actually go, oh, that's good, I like this company, I'll go support them. And with it being a younger generation and a company that is more targeting the younger generation, maybe that everyone's kind of talks about this in a negative way, it's actually a positive. We'll have to see. We won't know until we actually get the numbers, but that's just speculation. But that's something that's a wild card that's coming up in the earnings in the next quarter. But there's a second wild card in the earnings for the next quarter, which is the GLP-1 injections. Obviously, this is not factored into the guidance at the moment. The profit that they'll be making off this will be good. The revenue they will make of this will also be very good. They'll be able to get a constant supply is what they're saying as well. We weren't forecasting this at all in the next quarter's earnings, and obviously they've basically got a good half a quarter of this in, and this could be a very big contributor to that revenue and profitability beat, if they do beat, that is. So these are the 2 wildcards coming off on earnings that I looked at analyst projections for the quarter, and I was like, they've been upgraded a bit. But I feel like if these wild cards are in here, I mean, the stock is up a fair bit, but HIMS, I think, in the next quarter has the potential to maybe even, dare I say, post a bit of a poorer earnings. But I would say more than likely, I think HIMS has the ability with what's gone on in the last quarter to shock the actual analyst forecast, because a lot of this isn't really forecasted into those projections that we weren't expecting. So yeah, it could be quite interesting, is what I'll say in the next quarter. But yeah, just a few things to keep an eye on, a bit of information to think on there, a little bit of a celebration of HIMS and HERS absolutely smashing it, and a little bit of an update where I could potentially sell HIMS and HERS, which, as you saw today, is that it's definitely not a sell for me. This is hopefully one of my big home runs that are going to give me many returns for the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and if they do these financials, I think I will get there. The only thing that I have to consider now is that, do I sell maybe just 5% of the portfolio to maybe take a little bit profit off the table? I don't know. I'll think about it. We'll see what happens. But there's definitely but there's definitely no plan to sell the whole position anyway. So yeah, that's the video for today. Well done to any of you guys that are holding them HIMS and HERS shares, especially you guys that have been around for like the last 1 or 2 years, and hopefully me talking about HIMS and HERS kind of put you on the right track there to make some good money on it. I'm sure you have done. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in a bit.